It might be time to start taking the Aggies seriously. This week's state rankings. 1. Texas A&M, 4-1, last week. 1. Kellen Mond broke Johnny Manziel's record for career total yards in a win over Arkansas. Manziel did it in 2 seasons, but Mond deserves a nod for making it 4 years as a starter. The Aggies may not be challenged until their finale at Auburn. 2. SMU, 6-1, last week. 3. The Mustangs had a nice bounce back to rout Navy and after getting crushed by Cincinnati, which is playing like a top 10 team. Road trips to Temple and Tulsa come before the Mustangs host up. 3. Texas, 4-2, last week. 4. The Longhorns are a few plays away from being 6-0. They are also a few plays away from being 1-5. They made just enough to upset No. 6. Oklahoma State in Stillwater in their 3rd OT game of the season. Whether it was enough to save their season or bring some commitments back in the fold remains to be seen. The Longhorns host West Virginia next. 4. Houston, 2-2, last week. 2. It might not have changed the result, but the Cougars sure missed receiver returner Marquez Stevenson, who injured his ankle in the first quarter and didn't return in a 44-21 loss to Central Florida. It doesn't get any easier for the Cougars, who travel to No. 7. Cincinnati next week. 5. TCU, 2-3, last week. 8. The Horned Frogs haven't lost to a team from Texas this season after holding on to top Baylor. Only one Texas team is left on the schedule, next week versus Texas Tech. 6. Rice, 1-1, last week. 12. Southern Miss may not be the strongest team in CUSA, but it was nice to see the Owls travel and get a convincing win even without a few key players on defense who didn't make the trip for reasons that shall remain silent because of HIPAA. 7. Texas Tech, 2-4, last week. 5. The Red Raiders led OU 7-0 for a few minutes. The Sooners led by a lot more the rest of the way. A trip to Fort Worth is next. 8. UTSA, 4-4, last week. 6. Sincere McCormick was held to 66 yards rushing, 50 of which came on one play. That's all you need to know in the Roadrunners' loss at Florida Atlantic. A trip to Rice is up next. 9. North Texas, 2-3, last week. 7. North Texas, which had to cancel a game earlier in the season against Houston because of positive COVID-19 tests on its team, stayed home this week because of coronavirus issues in El Paso. 10. Baylor, 1-3, last week. 9. Give the Bears credit for not hanging it up early against TCU. But the schedule only gets tougher for Dave Aranda in his first season. 4. Ranked teams in a trip to Lubbock remain. 11. UTEP, 3-3, last week. 11. The Miners played it safe and postponed Saturday's game with North Texas because of a spike of COVID-19 cases in the region. 12. Texas State, 1-7, last week. 10. The Bobcats had some moments in the first half but eventually wore down against Louisiana. It doesn't get any easier next week when Appalachian St visits San Marcos.